Well, good morning. We're at Modern Maturity today. It's 18 outside. Feels like minus 18. Very cold. So we there's that speech about America about bring me your huddled masses. So that's us today. We're huddled and we're not massive, but we're freezing. So we're all huddled up with overcoats on in Modern Maturity. And to keep us warm today, I'm going to talk about sunny Belize and tell you guys about our mission trip to Belize. And I'm going to read today from the book of Acts, 16th chapter, beginning with verse 8. And it says, and they, passing by Mysia, came down to Troas. And a vision appeared to Paul in the night, and there stood a man of Macedonia and prayed him, saying, come over into Macedonia and help us. And so he went. And that's the verse for today. I used to have a friend named DeVille Legrand, and he was a Haitian, and he was a pastor. And he was always telling a story, and he said that when he went, a little lady from Canada came over, and she shared the gospel, a missionary lady, and she gave out candy, and the kids all came for the candy. And it's much like the testimony of our missionary Ramzan Hussein in Trinidad. The reason he went to church for the first time was for hot dogs and to meet girls. So sometimes Jennifer, his wife, doesn't like him to tell that story, but he tells it anyway. So people go to church sometimes for the wrong reason, but God, in His sovereignty, actually leads them there, and He's got His reason for them being there, and then He touches them. Many times it happens. And so DeVille went to church for the candies, as he says. And the lady gave out the candies, told him about Jesus, and then he really believes with all his heart that the Lord saved him at that young, tender age. Now, the unique thing about DeVille was, his name is D-E-V-I-L. It means devil. I went to the Atlanta Airport, Hartfield, one time to pick him up, and I couldn't find him. We got lost from each other, and I didn't know which flight I was on, and I was looking for him everywhere. So I went to this desk in the middle of the big concourse, and I said, sir, do you page people that they can come here so we can find each other? He said, yes, we do. I will be glad to help you out. I said, well, I would like for you to call out over the microphone my friend's name and tell him that Bob Phillips is here. Meet me here at this desk. And he said, oh, I would be so glad to do that, sir. We'd love to do that. I said, okay. He said, what is your friend's name? I said, my friend's name is DeVille Legrand. And he said, pardon, sir? I said, his name is DeVille Legrand. He said, well, how do you spell that first? He said, how do you spell that first name?
Hey, how are you? Hello.
Well, come in, Miss Joan.
Hi.
She's got a blanket on.
And it's heavy too.
It's very cold out there. We're just talking about the freeze. Yeah, I like it. That's the kind of coat we need. That's thick. Real cold. Anyway, Sister Joan, I was just telling them about my friend DeVille Legrand, and I was telling the story of a time I was in the Atlanta airport and trying to page him to come to meet me. And the guy wanted to know how to spell his first name, and I said, D-E-V-I-L. He said, devil. I said, well, he's French. It's really DeVille. Well, he said, look, he might be French, but I'm redneck, and this is Atlanta, and to me, it's devil. And he said, I'll tell you what, his whole demeanor changed, whole attitude changed. He said, there is no way in God's green earth that I'm going to announce on this microphone for the devil to come up here to me. He was this big old jolly looking guy. And he said, there ain't no devil coming here to me. I'll tell you that right now. I said, well, can't you say the word DeVille? He said, I can, but if that's the real devil, he's going to know what DeVille means, and he's still going to come up here and get me. So the guy refused to call him. He wouldn't do it. He was scared to death.
Oh my God.
I said, well, you know, he's really not the devil. He said, well, how you know he's not the devil? I said, what color do you think the devil is? He said, well, all the pictures I see of the devil, he's a big old jolly looking black guy, you know. He said, all the pictures I see of the devil, he be's red. I said, well, ain't no problem. If the bill's black, he can come. And he's black, so you know he ain't the devil. He said, sir, you want me to call the police? So I ain't calling no devil. So I said, well, I got an idea. I said, I got a $20 bill here. He said, I don't care if you got a $500 bill, I ain't calling no devil. I said, well, can you do this? I said, can you call Mr. LeGrand? He said, oh, yeah, I can work with that. He said, that's a whole different situation than calling some devil up here. So he called out for Mr. LeGrand to come to the thing, and all of a sudden, here come the devil walking up. And the closer he got, the guy said, oh, I got a bad stomachache, I got to go to the bathroom. And he took off. He laughed, he didn't want to see the devil. So his name caused more trouble than I've ever seen it. It was a really crazy thing. But back to my story. The reason his name was DeVille LeGrand, or Devil LeGrand, was because when he was born, or before he was even born, when he was in his mother's womb, his uncle was a witch doctor, powerful witch doctor in Haiti. And he decided that he was going to make DeVille, this baby, into a witch doctor and train him. So he taught the parents into naming him the Great Devil. That's what it means in French, the Great Devil. And my friend at the airport didn't see much great about him, but some people do. But anyway, that's his name. And he went to Bible college eventually in Jamaica. And he studied to be a preacher. And after he graduated, his plan was to go to stay in Jamaica, and they wanted him to stay there, and they were going to finance him, and they were going to set him up in a church, and he liked Jamaica. Well, the plan was made, but again, like the Lord changed the plan for his uncle, who was a witch doctor, the plan changed again. And so DeVille knew that his people in Haiti were very poor. It was very difficult. There was a lot of voodoo, a lot of other religions. And so he didn't really care that much about going back to Haiti. And so he read this verse. We just read a verse, John. It said Paul had a dream in the night, and God showed him a man talking. A man was saying, come over to Macedonia and help us. And so Paul went because he felt the Lord and the Holy Spirit leading him to go to Macedonia to come over and help them. And DeVille started reading the Bible and trying to figure out where he was supposed to be in, and whether he's supposed to be in Jamaica, whether he's supposed to go back to Haiti. And so he read that verse one day, and it just, you know how it just, sometimes a verse will just jump out and grab you. You know, the Lord will just touch your heart with it. Well, that verse grabbed him, and he kept going back to it. Come over to Macedonia and help us. We need help. Come over to Macedonia and help us. And then eventually he began, as he kept praying about it, he felt like the Lord was saying to him, come over to Haiti and help us instead of Macedonia. And that was in his thought process. Come over to Haiti and help us. Come over to Haiti and help us. Come over to Haiti and help us. And finally, he just couldn't fight it anymore, and he just told them that he couldn't take the lucrative position with the big salary they wanted to give him in Jamaica. He said, I've just got a burden for my people in Haiti, and I think the Lord wants me to go back there, and that's where I've got to go. And so he went back, and he started with nothing. And we helped him for years and years and years, and other people helped him, and he had about 7 or 8 mission outposts, and he had places, he built clinics, and he had a big church. We helped him raise money and buy the material, and brought carpenters over to help him build a big church that seat over 1,000 people. Just a tremendous church there, and he did a great work. But the Lord called him not to Macedonia, but to Haiti. And I told that whole story to say this, that we feel like the Lord's called us and our church and World Mission to Belize, to work there. And we feel like he's going to take us other places. I'm going to be going to Cuba in this first week in March coming up. This weekend we're going to Portland, Oregon for the weekend. We're going to be there because Ramsey and Jennifer's there having a conference. And Henrietta and Loretta and Highway and myself are going to fly out there for the weekend and support Ramsey. And so, but our primary focus is Belize. That's where God has really led us, and God has done some wonderful things. And thanks to Henrietta, all the stuff there, she's responsible for. I guess I can give her a little credit. We've got the beautiful building, we've got our lodge, we're building the Scottish Castle, we've got other places, and we're trying to get people to come to do mission work there. So I want to tell you about our latest mission trip a couple of weeks ago. It's January 27th, today, 28th, I think. We went on a preaching tour, basically. We had a young man named Chris Sipley from Canada, New Brunswick, Canada, which is close to Nova Scotia. And he speaks English. And he's not that far away from Quebec, where they speak French. And he went with us, and his main ministry is open air preaching, or you might say a street preacher. They go out in the streets and preach wherever God leads them to go. It's a very courageous ministry. It's a difficult ministry because people might throw things at you. They might curse you. They may, and they go to abortion clinics a lot, and they preach there. And as women come in to murder their babies, they will talk to them and try to talk them out of doing it. And so and there's a lot of violence that opposition to that, because people they want to do what they want to do. And one lady a few months back took a car and ran over one of the preachers and ran right over his leg and just messed his leg all up. And the police didn't do a thing. I don't know if they even gave her a ticket. And she did it on purpose.
Wow.
And so it's a real danger. It's a dangerous ministry. And I looked on the YouTube this morning before I came out here. And in Edinburgh, Scotland, where we've been and where we love, there was a young man, I think named Ken Carnes, that's part of the group, that was preaching in Edinburgh on the street. And it only showed a 2-minute clip, but the people must have called the police and told probably some untruth about what he was saying. Because if you go and preach on the street and you say homosexuality is a sin and God hates sin, or if you say abortion is wrong and God hates sin, what they'll do, they'll call the police and they'll say he's preaching that a message that qualifies as a hate crime. And they don't even look to see that God says it. They pretend that the preacher is saying it and that he's preaching a hate message. So our world really is turned upside down. And they're not hating anybody, they're saying God hates it. And you say that anymore and people will distort it, or they don't even hear it or they don't even believe in God, so they associate it with a hate crime. And Tony Miano, a friend of mine that I met at a conference I went to, he's in California. He's a former LA detective, and he's a street preacher. And he's got to go back to Inverness, Scotland, because they arrested him and accused him and booked him on preaching hate crimes and hate messages. Scotland's a very wicked place. We love it. And we built a Scottish castle on our place in Belize. But they have billboards when you go down the street in Scotland that says something like 8 million or 5 million, whatever, Scottish people are proud to be atheists and we don't want to hear about your Jesus. Mm-hmm. That's on a billboard in Scotland. But you got churches which are now empty, which are being filled up and occupied by Muslims, and that's okay. So it just goes to show that, Jesus was right. He said, they're going to hate you for my sake. And I've come to turn brother against brothers, mother against child, blah, blah, blah. In other words, if you believe in me and you trust me and you love me, even your own family may turn against you, So anyway, all that's going on, and we didn't know what to expect when we preached on the street the first time in Belize a couple of weeks ago. So we went, and we knew you're going to love this, we've got a yellow bus. She said, don't talk about the yellow bus anymore. But we've got this beautiful yellow dart bus straight from Delaware, Dover. And we've converted into a gospel bus, a preaching bus. And it's got Lost World Jungle Lodge on the side with green letters. Our colors are green and yellow. So we thought of an idea. We said, when those guys go street preach, they call it getting on a box. They'll take a milk crate or something and stand on. And I said, we're going to be first-class street preacher. We ain't standing on a milk crate. We're going to stand on a yellow bus. And so the yellow bus has this wheelchair ramp that we have for highway to put his wheelchair on, then it lowers him down to the ground. So what we did, we took it to a place, and we stopped, and we let the ramp out, and we walked out on the ramp and we preached. Much better than a milk carton, whatever, crate. And so it's a mobile preaching station. It's a mobile church. You can just go to, you can see a crowd, you pull over, let the ramp down, you get up and you preach. And we bought this what they call a hailer. It's a microphone you put around your waist with a strap and you plug this thing into your ear. And it's really effective. It's really loud. So anyway, we did a lot while we were there this time. We did a lot on the place and getting it in shape. But the main thing we did this time was preach. And Loretta got up first time and she sang from the wheelchair ramp. And then this was in a place down a few miles from our lodge. And we went to a bus stop. And there weren't as many people there at that particular time because the buses running, come and go, and we started preaching. And I preached first that day, so I got up and I said, we know there's not a lot of people here, so we're just going to preach to you, and we'll preach to each other that's here. And all of a sudden, this guy sitting over in the corner over there said, well, I'm here. And so we said, good, amen, we'll preach to you. There was another old man that came up, and he went back to his house, and way back in the back, he was sitting in front of his house listening to us. And then there's some more kids and people came up. And the thing was so loud, the hailer, that I'm sure the people in the village within the hearing distance heard us preaching. And so then the buses started coming by, and so people would get off, and they would hear a little bit. And finally, after I got through preaching, I got down, and Loretta got back up to sing. And I looked around, and they had gathered looked like about 10 little kids, and they were right there, and they'd already got on the bus and sitting there listening. So that was pretty neat. They knew all their names and everything, man. And Chris had a group of kids out on the bus stop, and he was talking to them, and so it ended up working pretty good. And we had these three guys. So it was John, Sandy, and Marino, I think was his name, Mario. And Jeff, our guy that watches our place, said that Mario was the thief. But he was listening to the gospel. Now Sandy was a big, strong, strapping-looking guy, very nice, and he's the one that said, I'm here, and he came up. And then there was a unique guy named John, and we got him on YouTube. He was kind of thin, he had dreadlocks all over his head, and he was pretty cool. He was very soft-spoken, and they all came up and thanked us for preaching. You know, whereas they didn't before. What time is it now?
5:11.
Already? I heard
It's
it.
11:30 goes off. You got plenty of time.
Well, I was trying to get as much in for her as I can
Oh.
before she goes. But anyway, we went to Belize City. And the first time I preached was in Danriga, which is a pretty rough city. And we met this guy that was a Muslim. He argued with us about 30 minutes, and we debated. And then I went ahead and preached, and Loretta filmed it. Then we came back there again later in the week, and there was a market with all kind of people there. Well, across the street from the market is the lumber yard. They call it Lumba, Yaard, lumber yard, the way they say it. And so the guy, Kit, that owns it, we've been doing business with him for years, and he's our buddy. So we said, do you mind if we park our bus and preach here? He said, do anything you want to. He gave us permission, so the police couldn't say anything. And we got to preach to all kind of people in the market. Then we went to Belize City one day, and it was pouring rain, and we got up there, and we had about 8 of us, and we were all like giving out tracts. And then we finally found this spot, and the rain let up a little bit. Where 5 roads came together, it was near the bus terminal, and it was 5 o'clock traffic, and there were just hundreds upon hundreds of people just going back and forth, buses coming by, cars going by. So all of us got up and preached about 10 or 15 minutes apiece and handed out tracts. And then it got to rain so bad we had to quit. So we really had some good experiences. And then we went one day to Roaring Creek, where our friend Kim Barber's a missionary. He has a church there. And on Saturday, we walked through the community and gave out tracts and invited the people to come to church the next day. And it went real well. But we met this one guy that really touched our heart. The last guy we saw, a guy named Herman, and we went to his house, and Herman was practically blind. He was almost totally blind. And he was sitting there, and we started talking to him, and he was a really dignified person, and he spoke very, very, enunciated his words very well. He was very intelligent, and just had a beautiful way of speaking about him. And we sat there, we didn't realize it, but we stood there and talked to him for about an hour. And we talked about the Lord, and he was asking us different questions. And then he said, all I got here is a radio. My batteries are almost dead. And he doesn't have any television, or doesn't have a whole lot of people come to talk to him. So he got on our minds and on our hearts. And after we preached on the next Sunday morning, we all took the bus over, a whole busload of us. And we gathered all the batteries we could up out of our suitcases, and we took them over there and gave them to him as a little gift. You know? So it was one of those guys that just really touched our hearts. And so it was a good week, and the Lord really worked. And then we went one night on a pontoon ride down to the river, and it was a beautiful thing. It was in the afternoon, and the sun goes down, and we were on the water. And we took our coats because it was kind of chilly in Belize this time, but it was still a beautiful ride, and we enjoyed that. And then we went to Belize City one day. I think it's the day we were going to give out the tracts. And the bus had just been repaired before we got there. There was a fuel injectors, wasn't it? They had to put in.
That was Belmopan, though, not Belize.
Oh yeah, Belmopan. Yeah. So anyway, the bus was running good when we got there. It came to got us, took us back. It was driving us all over the place. So we went to Belmopan that one day, the capital. And to get to Belmopan from our lodge, you got to go down these hills and around these curves and back up hills, and it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Now, if the bus had started skipping and missing, while we were at the bottom of those valleys, we would never have gotten up the hill. Because it just, when it does that stuff, it just won't go. And so we went through all those hills and valleys. We got finally to the level ground going into Belmopan. And as we come into the city limits, the bus started skipping and sputtering like it was doing before. And she would take it and she would cut it off and wait a few minutes. And then she would start it. And then she would press the accelerator and it would go real quick, real for maybe 100 yards or something. And then it would stop, but she'd cut it off again.
Oh, my.
And then we'd have to start again. I guess people thought we were really crazy gringos, you know.
I didn't know how to drive a
Crazy,
bus.
yeah, crazy Americans. Get a new driver, get a new driver. One guy went by, you know, the real macho there. One guy went by and said, no wonder you got a woman driver driving the bus. It was crazy. I was embarrassed. I put a bag on my head. Here we go. Stop. Stop. It was crazy. So finally, we saw Mary, Pastor Barber's wife, in her van driving by us. And she's deaf, she can't hear a thing. So she comes driving by us and we said, hey, oh, we're going to be rescued, we're going to be rescued. Everybody hollered at her. We're all saying, hey, Mary, Mary, Mary. She kept on driving, she couldn't hear a thing, man. She drove on by. And we said, oh, man. So finally, I don't know what happened, but somehow she finally saw us. A big yellow bus like that, I don't know how you can miss it. Yeah, how can you miss it, man? So finally she saw us and she come back to rescue us. And so Henrietta finally got the bus into the man's parking lot where we found the best mechanic in Belize, they say, was about 200 or 300 yards from us. Now, God works in mysterious ways. He always in his providence comes through. You know? So she got the bus in there, and then we went on with Mary to go do our witnessing and everything, and they stayed with her and Loretta stayed with the bus for what, 5 hours, 6 hours?
5 hours, yeah.
5 hours they stayed to that bus. And so I thought to myself, she loves that bus. If that was me laying in the hospital, would she stay 5 hours? See you, Mary.
Okay, catch you
That's
next
one of
one.
our cards
Oh,
we gave
okay,
out.
thank
Louise,
you. Okay, all
so you
right.
can look at it.
Bye.
That's
Tell
our
Fred.
flag on the front.
Thank you.
Bye, see you next week.
Okay,
Bye.
continue my story here. All right. So anyway, the good thing that happened was that when the guy started working on the bus, we were all wondering, well, my goodness, we just get to spending all this money on it. Well, how much is this going to cost? It was kind of scary. So finally, it was just a fuel filter, right?
Yep.
The main thing wrong was a fuel filter. One of those
Dirty.
got dirty and caused all that problem. So actually, it ended up not as near as much money as we were worried about it costing, and we got the fuel filter. So we thought the Lord really blessed us there too. And then it started running, and still running today, I guess, as far as we know. It ran the whole trip great, so we were so thankful. So that was another experience that the Lord really, really blessed us with. And so we went down on the first Sunday. We drove 100 miles one way to Punta Gorda, which is in the far south end of the country. And we took Chris Sipley from Canada and Jeff, our what's his name?
Caretaker.
Our caretaker, yeah, and some other people with us. So we went all the way down there, and that was a blessing because Bob Farley is a guy that helped us get our bus fixed, and he's been a missionary there for a good while. He believes like us. He's Calvinistic in his theology now. He's come to the doctrines of grace. And Ken Barber also believes like us. So we got down to Punta Gorda, and they started a new church. He's been building for, I don't know, what, 5 or 6 years? This big training center, big building, huge building. It's like a miniature modern maturity, and he's got places for medical people to come. He's got places where he lives for the time being. They got other places for different type of ministries. And he's got this great big room he built specifically for having church services. So we got there, and it was a really big room. It's probably about as big as, not quite, but almost as big as the cafeteria. It was pretty big, a little smaller. So the place had about 30, 40 people in it. It was a good crowd, and they'd only been started less than a month. So we were really, really excited to see all those people there. It's a new Calvinistic Reformed church, and so Loretta sang that morning, and then Chris preached a really good sermon, and then we had a meal with him, and we ate after it was over and everything, and we talked about Ramsden. And I want to interject that into the study this morning because, you know, Ramsden is our missionary. He's been here several times. He's spoken, him and Jennifer, his wife. He's spoken here, and she's whispered in his ear and told him what to say. But, he gets a stutter, and she always says,
Oh, okay.
they're a pretty good team. But she don't preach, but she just fills in the gaps if he gets if he misses a beat, you know. So he is in Belize. He's in Trinidad and Tobago, not Belize. And he's been there, and he's got a church there, and he's got a seminary there, a Bible college. Well, the way he got people to come to his Bible college is by being on the radio. Now, he was on the radio, and all the charismatics are Benny Hinn's big time there. They own the radio station. So they got to not liking Ramsden's preaching because he believed differently than they did about some things. So they just kicked him off, told him he had to leave. And so he lost his program, and it made it difficult for him to be getting students to come to his college or his church. So anyway, this went on for a year or so, and Bob Farley, remember, he's the guy in Belize who's the missionary, and he's our friend too. Well, Bob Farley knows how to begin radio stations. He's done some in Belize. So he called Ramsden and said, I'm going to fly to Trinidad. I think he paid his own money. And he came there. He said, I'm going to talk to you and tell you how to start a radio station and see if I can help you get your own radio station so you can preach the gospel straight from the Bible and preach what you feel you should preach. So he went there. And one day, Bob Farley drove up on the mountain. Ramsey must have told him where to go. There was a place there that had been a mission site for years. Missionaries had been there. And they weren't really, I don't think, doing all that much right now. But Farley went and he began to talk to these missionaries. And he told them that Ramsden wanted to start a radio station and told him that he had got thrown off the air. And so these people really believe primarily like Ramsden believes. And they said, you know what? They said, this may not be exactly word for word, but they said, you see that hill out there in that piece of property, that cement platform? They said, you know what that is? And Bob Farley said, no. They said, well, many years ago, when we bought this property, and the first people that bought it, the goal, which has not come to pass yet, it's still a slab sitting there. The goal was that we have a radio station, a Christian radio station. That's why. That's just amazing. You watch God just put these things together in His providence and just bring people together, and it's so exciting watching Him do all this stuff. And so Bob Farley said, well, that's what I'm here to talk to you about. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I think they said, well, what we'll do, if Ramsden and you can get a station and a building put up in a tower, we'll give you that spot and you won't have to pay for it.
Oh my.
And you can build your station right there. Amazing. And then Ramsden found that out, got all excited, and he was so excited that he didn't even take Jennifer, because he knew he was so excited he wasn't going to stumble and make any mistakes talking. So he went flying to this other place where they had friends in a religious organization. I don't even know what it was. And he told them about that. And they told him, they said, well, look, if God's given you the spot up on the mountain, we'll come and we'll help build your radio station,
Oh,
the
boy.
building. It's just
They said
amazing.
they're gonna give him the equipment and everything. He's
Oh,
gonna
my.
be set up.
Yeah, gonna
They're
give him
gonna
the
pay for
equipment.
it, the organization.
That's just a miraculous. It has to be of God, you know. And so it shows you that if the devil works and he tries to stop the preaching of the real gospel, that God's going to make a way for the gospel to be preached, no matter what. No matter if they lock you up in Scotland in jail for a few days, no matter if they throw you off the air in Trinidad, no matter if the bus breaks down in Belize. That's 3 instances right there that God will get His word out when and how He wants to, regardless of what
Promise.
nature, the weather, people, the devil, or anybody does about it. He will get His word out, and it will go forward, and His kingdom will be built, and that's exciting to me. It's really exciting. Yes,
You ready to leave?
you need to go.
Pardon?
You need to go.
Yeah.
Go. You can slip out.
Well, it's time anyway.
Yeah, I'm almost finished. It's okay. Thank you for coming. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye. So anyway, what time is it now?
10 after.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, to complete that thought, he was having trouble coughing.
Yeah.
Ramzan's got a piece of ground to put the radio station on, and he can preach whatever he wants to preach. Preach the gospel. He's got a group of people that are going to help him build the building, give him the equipment, give him everything, pay for everything that needs to be there. Bob Farley is in the process of finding or trying to help him find a tower, because he's done this kind of stuff, to put a radio tower. Now there's only one more thing we've got to pray about, I think. The only thing that has to be prayed about now is that in Trinidad, which probably is like anywhere else, you have to get permission from the government or the Trinidadian equivalent of the FAA or whatever it is. I think that's airplanes, but whatever. The government has to give you permission and a permit to build a radio station. And Farley said that they only give so many out. They've only got so many allotments. And right now I think there's maybe a waiting list. But we need to really pray that if it's God's will, that He will work a way for Ramzan to get that permission and that permit to build a station. And you look at and you live by faith, and you go one step at a time, and you look back and you see how that God touched Bob. Well, first of all, Bob Farley and Ramzan didn't even know each other, and this is all tied in with Belize. Is the reason I'm talking about it. But years ago, we had a conference in Belize City, and Ramzan came up and he preached with us at Belize City. Well, I think it's the first time maybe that we met Bob Farley, or maybe the second or third time.
First time, I think.
First time. And Bob Farley, and I'll show you what all God's done in this. It's what Ramzan marvels at. It has to be God. Because God put us together with Bob Farley out of the clear blue. Then Bob Farley met us, and his intention was to bring his wife and child to Belize City to the airport, fly them back home to Texas for a visit, and then he was going to turn around and drive all the way back to 200 miles or so to Punta Gorda. That was the plan. Well, he took them to Belize City, he put them on the airplane, he got in his truck, he started back toward Punta Gorda, and the bridge was out, and he had to stop. Now, I'm going to say this halfway facetiously and halfway in reality, but God just destroyed the bridge. He allowed it to happen. It's more than coincidental, and but anyway, whether God calls it or not is debatable, but He did allow it. I can say that factually. And Bob Farley had to stop, come back to Belize City, and I think he stayed in the same hotel that we
He
stayed
did.
in.
He came straight to that hotel, and we were having a conference.
Yeah, at the Best Western Hotel. And he walked in and we said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I guess the Lord wanted me to come to the conference because the bridge is out." Now that, you trace that back to that beginning, and then fast forward over here to what happened in Trinidad a few weeks ago with this radio tower. And you say, wow, look what God did. And all these intricate things. And it's just like us going up and down that hill with the bus and then stopping just exactly right. So even though you get discouraged sometimes about our place in Belize, we don't have a lot of people coming yet, but you begin to think, well, if God has come this far, surely He didn't build all this just to fail, you know. So you got to have faith and believe and just keep going forward. And now in the conference, we saw that Bob Farley became a friend. He loved Ramsden for some reason. They cemented a relationship. Now his theology was different than ours at that time. So since that time, and when he got to Belize, God's even changed his theology that he believes just like us,
Oh.
as Reformed Baptist or Calvinistic theology. So that's significant, you know. And so then for God to put on Bob Farley's heart to go there and help Ramsden is amazing. And then he went, and now all this has taken place. So God's doing some wonderful, wonderful things. And it's we got to talk about all this when we're in Punta Gorda this time with Bob that Sunday. So it was a great, great time of fellowship and to remember and thank God for all the ways that He has intervened and He's doing all these wonderful things. So now we're going to Portland, Oregon this coming Friday, and this is Tuesday. So that's 6 days from now. Is that right?
No.
No.
Wednesday, Thursday.
3
Friday.
days.
3 days.
I just want to see if y'all were sharp. So in 3 days, we're going to get to go out there and be with Ramsden, and he's going to tell us his side of the story, and we're going to get to thank God again, all over again, for all the stuff that's happened. So it was pretty cool. It was really neat. So then we went to Hopkins, which is another little town, 25, 30 miles from our lodge, near the end of the week before we left. And we went there, and we were going to go on a pontoon ride in the boat. And God kind of changed things around and had His way again and directed us, because the intention we had was to take the yellow bus and to abuse Highway's wheelchair ramp and put it out and use it again, to use it for his wheelchair and preach on it, which I'm sure he was tickled death we were preaching on it. But then we were gonna pull up in Hopkins, all these people milling around. And we got there and we drove over this horrible, horrible road. And she was saying, we went down in one ditch, and she said, "Did the sun go down? Are the clouds covering the sun?" And we said, "Why?" And we
Why,
looked
it's so
around,
dark?
it was black.
Oh,
We
my.
were down in the hole.
Oh, my.
The hole was so deep we couldn't see, so we started back up the other side,
Yeah.
and somebody said, "Oh, the sun's coming back out." And it really seemed like the holes were that big. Yeah, they were huge, man. So we finally got through all those holes, and we got to our spot to preach, and there was one little lady sitting on the bus bench, and maybe one guy wandering around, and the place was deserted.
Empty?
Yeah, it was empty. So we said, "What are we going to do?" And she says to the preachers, "Well, we don't know what y'all going to do, but we're going to the beach." So and we said, "Well, what we got to do? We ain't got nobody to preach to. It's to
took the
preach to the
girls to the
trees."
Trees on the trees.
So I told Chris, I said, "Well, I guess we need to get out there going to the beach."
Yeah.
So they hung a right, took the yellow bus down to the beach, and just hung out. So we decided, well, there's nobody to preach to, so we just go around and talk to people one-on-one.
That's right.
And let them tracks and talk to them. So we started going around talking, and I met this one girl back there cooking in the back of this restaurant, and she knew all about our place, where we were and everything. And she John Glasgow, remember the guy that pastored in
Silkgrass.
Silkgrass? Well, we went there and preached one time. Well, she's a member of his church now.
Oh, okay.
And she was talking about, she's working there, and she said, I worked at a Christian camp before. I said, well, would you ever want to work in a jungle lodge and help us out sometime? She said, yeah, I think I got her name, her stuff. And so anyway, we went on down the road, and I'll close with this. I told the church about it Sunday, but I had one of the most touching encounters I've had in a long time. I had my handful of tracts with a little Belize flag on the front, which Chris made, which was very attractive. And I looked across the road, and there was a little guy there, and nobody else was around. So I went over and started to talk to him, and he's probably 5'6", 5'7", 5'8". He was a nice-looking young man. Had his hair shaved, had his shirt off, digging. It was hot, and he had tattoos all over him. He wasn't quite as good a shape as Jeff, but he was pretty good shape. You could tell he worked out. So I went over and started to talk to him, and he was real nice. He took the track. He was very polite. And then he said, I started to walk off, and I just felt like I should go back again. And so I turned around and went back, and I said, well, while I'm here, do you mind if I just tell you about Jesus real quick and tell you, or talk to you about salvation, about being saved? And he said, no, go ahead. So he rested his hands on the shovel and just stood there and listened to me. And we began to talk. And then he stopped me and he asked me this question, which really, really shocked me. He said, his name was Marlon. He said, can you answer this question? I said, I'll try. And he said, do you think if somebody has killed people that God can forgive them? And I told him Sunday, I didn't know if he was talking about himself, but he might have been. And so I said, yeah. I said, he can forgive that. If you, Apostle Paul, the guy that wrote most of the New Testament, was a murderer. He was killing Christians, and he was taking people to be killed. And I said, that's what he did for a living. And I said, God struck him down one day, bap like that, on the ground. And when he got up off the ground, it had to be God that did it, because the first thing Paul said was, he didn't say, wow, who hit me? He got up and said, Lord, what do you want me to do? First thing, he knew somehow that God had struck him down. And the Holy Spirit just, may have been working with him before. We don't know, but the Holy Spirit showed him that it was God. And I said, he can do the same for anybody, murderer or not. And then he told me something else. He said, well, I've got, I lay in my bed at night and I premeditate and plan how I'm going to kill about 7 guys that have abused me and really have hurt me. And he said, it's premeditated. He said, that's pretty bad, ain't it? I said, well, yeah, God wouldn't like that. And I said, Judas premeditated and planned to go and betray the Lord. And that's a really heinous sin. And he said, yeah, I know. He said, I can't sleep at night because I'm too busy planning how I'm going to carry out these things. And we kept talking, and he took me back to show me this. He kind of was an artist too, and he took me back and showed me, I didn't tell you all this, little statue, but he's made of Haile Selassie, the former king of, I think, Ethiopia, who said he was Jesus Christ. And he said, I'm really getting tired of living like this. And he said, I've got an 8-year-old daughter that I'm raising, and I don't want anything bad to happen to her. My wife left me. And he said, so I've got to do something because she's more important than all of this premeditation. And he mentioned something about meditating. He's been doing some meditating, and he's been really trying to change, because he said this premeditation has got such a hold on me that I can't shake it. And it's just really pulling me down and I hate it. And I said, well, why don't you think about meditating on Jesus and stop premeditating on the other thing? And he said, I can't. I need help. And so finally one thing led to another. And I don't do this often because I always preach that we don't want to manipulate someone to make a quote decision or be saved before God's ready to save them. But I also preach that I don't mind praying with somebody or letting them pray. But when they get through praying, I'm not about to tell them that now they're saved because I don't know. I try not to violate my own principles, so I just felt really deeply impressed that he prayed. Because I knew we had to leave and I couldn't see him. I asked him if he wanted to pray, and he said, well, why don't you pray? And then finally he said, okay, I'll pray. I said, if you pray, I'm not saying you're going to be saved, but if you'll just talk to God before I leave, you'll at least get break the ice and talk to him for the first time, and maybe it'll be easier after I leave, you can talk to him. So he prayed. And I told them Sunday he prayed one of the most beautiful prayers I've ever heard. I was shocked.
Really?
And I didn't lead him. I didn't tell him. I didn't say pray after me. I just left him to talk to God. And he said, "Dear Lord Jesus Christ," and he said, "I come to you humbly." And he said something too. I forgot to tell y'all. He kept saying, "Lord, it's hard." He said, "I just work. I don't have any material wants. I don't want to be rich. I just want to get by day to day." And he said, "It's hard. It's so hard trying to make a living here, and it's so hard trying to take care of my daughter, and it's so hard being harassed by these mean people." And he kept humbly saying stuff like that. And then he said, I've really committed sin, Lord, and I ask you to forgive me." And I didn't tell him to say that. And I was shocked when he said it. Now, he prayed a really precious prayer. And he got through, and I just told him, I said, "Look, Marlon, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you you're saved right now because I don't know." I said, "But I know that you talked to God. You were honest with him. You prayed a sweet prayer." And I said, "I know that I would think that God heard that prayer because he prayed with all sincerity." And I said, "I don't know if God's going to save you or whether he's begun the process already before I got here or whether he began the process today." I said, "But just keep seeking him and keep praying to him. And when he hits you, if he's going to save you, if he hits you like he did the Apostle Paul and knocks you down, you'll know. You'll know when it happens. And you'll know because your whole life will change. He'll change your nature. You won't want to premeditate anymore. You'll have a different nature, different desires, and you can tell." And I told him I know where his house is. I told him we'd try to keep in touch with him.
Oh,
Told
I was
him
going to
where we
ask you,
were.
we're going to check on
Because he
it.
really touched my heart. And he was just so sincere. And then I saw Chris on the bus, and then I called him over, and Chris got to meet him. And so put him on your prayer list, if you will. Tell
Marlon?
the church, Marlon, yeah, because I really pray that God will save him and help him, because he was so sincere. So that was a highlight of my trip, And
When you guys go over there, do you feel sometimes so sorry for certain individuals that you want to bring them back with you?
yeah, you do.
Yeah.
They really touch your heart sometimes. She's got a little guy named Alex, he used to call her. He would come in and he would say, "Mom-moms, mom-moms."
Oh.
He wouldn't say mom-mom. He'd say,
Uh-huh.
"Mom-moms, mom-moms." And I would say, "There's two of them now, two mom-moms." We're in big trouble. So we've nicknamed him Mom-moms. That's his nickname, Mom-mom. But
He's 10 years old. He's a sweetheart.
Oh.
yeah, he used to get on my nerves because he's real hyper,
Yeah,
at first,
hyper.
but
I like that hyper.
he had a way of really getting to you, winning you over. He's really, really sweet, So anyway, thank you, Miss Jones, and thank you for being here today.